Hello, my name is Tolg and I exist, therefore I think too much. I am reading Beyond Good and Evil by Fred. I am also at point 56 in chapter 3, which is called The Religious Mood. First chapter, he critiqued his peers. Or was it the study of philosophy entirely? And then the next chapter, he critiqued his peers. And then this chapter, he is critiquing religion. I have not disagreed with him so far this chapter. Right, so I'm on 56. Whoever, like myself, prompted by some enigmatical desire, has long endeavored to go to the bottom of the question of pessimism, there's a question there, and free it from the half-Christian, half-German, pessimism is half-Christian and half-German, narrowness and stupidity in which it has finally presented itself to this century, namely in the form of Schopenhauer's philosophy. He really hates Schopenhauer. Whoever, with an Asiatic and super Asiatic eye, I don't know what explains the difference there, has actually looked inside and into the most world-renouncing of all possible modes of thought, beyond good and evil, and no longer like Buddha and Schopenhauer under the dominion and delusion of morality, insinuating that Buddha and Schopenhauer exist outside of morality or are themselves amoral. I guess Buddha didn't necessarily concern himself with morality so much as just what would make most sense out of the demands of life. And I guess it fits into a moral sense of being. But I think it was intending to speak beyond morality, beyond good and evil. I wonder if Nietzsche doesn't necessarily get along with Buddhism. Also, this insinuates that morality is delusional in and of itself. In consideration of what? As I understand, morality is subjective per the society that you participate in. So it isn't something that you can understand objectively. There is no objective way to address morality. And in it not having an objective stance in life, I don't know that it's appropriate to say that in and of itself morality is delusional so much as certain peoples might be delusional. Morality is subjective, and there are some morals that I understand to be delusional, and I can't necessarily speak on most cultures' morality because I don't know most cultures' morality. But if you get into the comments, if you watch this and you want to tell about any morality that you have learned that is seemingly delusional, go ahead. Whatever rocks your boat, floats it, whatever you're doing on the boat, have fun. Whoever has done this has perhaps just thereby, without really desiring it, opened his eyes to behold the opposite ideal, the ideal of the most world-approving, exuberant, and vivacious man, who has not only learnt to compromise and arrange with that which was, is, and is, I've lost myself, Whoever has done this has perhaps just thereby, without really desiring it, opened his eyes to behold the opposite ideal, the ideal of the most world-approving, exuberant, and vivacious man. Is the world approving of this man, or is the man approving of the world? Who has not only learnt to compromise and arrange with that which was and is, but wishes to have it again as it was and is. If it is, then it need not be had again. Also, he enjoys Judaism, which could be argued as a form of Christianity, but not really. At all. Mostly just an Abrahamic religion, as I understand it. So is this to say, because while I understand very little of Judaism, in understanding very little of Judaism, I can't say that I'm at all a source to be asked about it. But is Nietzsche a proper representation of Judaism? And in that, is Judaism generally of the understanding that morality is delusional? Also, is this to say that Asian belief systems, which the continent of Asia is fucking huge. So is this to say that Asian belief systems, through Nietzsche's understanding, are world renouncing of all possible modes of thought? Or that you would need, in order to be an exuberant and vivacious man that is world approving, you would first have to come at anything from the angle of having an Asian eye, which would lead me to believe what is meant by Asian eye is an understanding for any of the many, many religions and mythologies in Asia, if not all of them. This has so many additive words to the structure of the sentence that it reads like psychosis. Let's see if I can't try to make sense out of it. I left off on delusion of morality. Whoever has done this has perhaps just thereby, without really desiring it, opened his eyes to behold the opposite ideal, the ideal of the most world-approving, exuberant, and vivacious man who has not only learnt to compromise and arrange with that which was and is, but wishes to have it again as it was and is, for all eternity, insatiably calling out de capo, not only to himself, but to the whole piece and play. And not only the play, but actually to him who requires the play and makes it necessary because he always requires himself anew and makes himself necessary. What? That was him asking what. And this would not be circulus vitiosus deus. I will interpret that later. Okay, so trying to piece it all together. Somehow needing to go to the bottom of the question. Where was the top of the question? Pessimism is a question. Bottom of the question of pessimism. Okay, that doesn't make like a fucking sense. Pessimism is a state, not a question. There can be a pessimistic question, though. And free it. So free the enigmatic desire. No, free the... Free what? What is it? Whoever like myself prompted has long endeavored to go to the bottom of the question. So the question is the subject. No, of pessimism. That would be preposition and then object of preposition. And whoever is the subject. But I would have to assume that free it is talking about the preposition. So it must be like a second subject. Can't remember what that was called. So anyways, the question needs to be freed, and pessimism is a question. And it needs to be freed from what is now half Christian and half German, and I'm not certain how it has inherited these genes. What makes it half Christian and half German? Inherited these traits, my bad. Pessimism is half Christian and half German? Christians are pessimistic? Yeah. Probably. I just found out today that the modality of U.S. Christianity is praying for the revelations. Ask most Satanists, and they'll be able to tell you that the chapter of Revelations was written long after the initial publication of the Bible. And Christians will more than likely argue that God speaks at whatever time God pleases, existing out of time, and a prophet can come about whenever. But then who dictates what is added and why it is not still added to the Bible? Anyways, I was most intrigued by the chapter of Revelations when I was a Christian. And I definitely read that. But I also believed in metaphors, and that, the Bible had the capacity to speak in them. And it does say, biblically, that the end times is not the end of earth, but the end of what is known, and heaven will come down to earth. And as the patterns go, set up biblically, hell comes to earth, and then heaven comes to earth. And somehow everybody is meant to get along in the end days. After the end days, I guess, with all of these dimensions having met in the middle. But yeah, that's biblical. So praying for the end of times, not only doing that is going against God on the premise of no one will know the end of time. No one will know when this will happen, because I can't remember what it actually says biblically. My memory sucks, but essentially God exists outside of time. And no one can dictate when God will do something on the premise that God is everything. So someone in the year 2026 can say that the world is ending tomorrow, and the world may have ended in 2015. Because God exists outside of time, we'll never fucking know what the hell is meant. I think that's how it's set, because we're not God. We're not objective, and we don't have the ability to insert and take away. Having said that, I did just learn about a cult of Christianity that is literally praying for the destruction of the world. How far are you misled? Do you even know what Christianity means? To follow Christ's teachings? Do you even understand the lore that you're following? I mean, whatever. I think at this point you should just go by a different name. Cult of Destruction. Because what the fuck are you doing? So as far as pessimism, yeah. Half German, can't say. And also have no idea what the fuck is meant by narrowness where Germanic peoples are concerned. Most world renouncing where all possible modes of thought is concerned. How do you renounce what you rely on? Also, I think he's equating Asian understanding to be highly moral while insulting morality. And what is the opposite ideal of the most world renouncing of all possible modes of thought? Least possible modes of thought. Most world inviting. Yeah, well, he goes on to explain it. The ideal of the most world approving. Whoever has looked inside and is no longer under the dominion of delusion of morality has opened his eyes to the ideal of compromise and wishes for the past to repeat. And he makes himself necessary, thusly makes himself good. There's a lot of world history. To want it all to repeat is insane. That's what's currently going on. I don't have the best means of communication right now because my brain. I've said it better before. I will attempt to say the thing I am about to say. The U.S. is currently repeating multiple epochs of its history at once. Like going through Prohibition, the Red Scare, women's rights, reintroduction, like in Eisenhower's time of the Christian populace being a ruling class. The moment in history introducing vaudeville, where Americans at large sold their children for profit. Genociding the indigenous, like in the initial expansion of territories. There's a lot of epochs of history currently being repeated all at once in this current time. And I guess he was from a different place on a different time, so he would not necessarily be specifically speaking on the U.S., but the U.S. is not the only country to have participated actively in genocide. And I'm pretty sure, not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure King Leopold was committing atrocities before or during the Victorian period. So wanting all of history to repeat, no thank you. Learn from history so that you don't repeat it going forward and you can make better decisions. Yes, please. Yes, please. And delusion of morality? Every structured society needs generally agreed upon rules. That's all morality is. Guidelines. However, the delusion arises when one understands these morals to be cemented truths rather than something that is a guideline and ought to be adjusted with received information, progress of technology, progress of scholarly capacity, inclination. Assuming there's any progress at all, looking dead at the US right now. So yeah, I up to this point had thought that I was perfectly in agreement with Nietzsche. But at this point, no. Perfectly in disagreement. I can say nothing at all about Schopenhauer, for I know nothing at all about Schopenhauer. Still need clarification on what in the fuck is an Asiatic eye. And how you get one? Not that I'm saying I want one, but like, how do you have an Asiatic eye that you can use? Like, there's a discerning eye. Again, thoroughly believe that that's just a means of lumping a lot of beliefs together or addressing them briefly. It's so lazy if that's the case. And doesn't do any of those beliefs any justice at all. If that is what was to be understood from Asiatic eye. So yeah. That was 56. Wild ride. Okay. Now let's see. 57 is shorter. It doesn't mean anything if he's on a weird point in his mental state. Okay, so it starts the distance, and as it were the space around man, grows with the strength of his intellectual vision and insight. This is abstract as fuck. His world becomes more profound, he says profounder. New stars, new enigmas, and notions are ever coming into view. Perhaps everything on which the intellectual eye has exercised its acuteness and profundity has just been an occasion for its exercise, something of a game, something for children and childish minds. Perhaps the most solemn conceptions that have caused the most fighting and suffering, the conceptions quote-unquote God and quote-unquote sin, will one day seem to us of no more importance than a child's plaything or a child's pain seems to an old man. And perhaps another plaything and another pain will then be necessary once more for the old man, always childish enough, an eternal child. I've said it before, don't know which video, find it if you want. I have several favorite quotes. One of my favorite quotes is, "It is folly of man to forget what it was to be young." I don't see why a child's pain should be less important just because you grew through yours. In growing through yours and ascertaining more pain, you should understand that being new to pain is so maddening, and lacking control over your surroundings whilst having been introduced to pain that is newly understood, infuriating and, well, painful. Can't find a good word for that, but what's a good word for suffering? Man, it's suffering. So yeah, I don't understand why you wouldn't be considerate, why you wouldn't have knowledge of just a new thing being introduced that is awful to deal with, why that's lost because you have put an import on age. I guess this whole point is the conclusion that a lot of people have gotten to, which is, I know enough to know I know nothing. There's always more to learn. And the more you learn, the more you realize there's more to learn. Also, I would not have used the word conceptions more than I would have used the word perceptions. You know, I think part of being human, or part of one of the great things about being human, is that no human is alike. No one person is similar. And I really enjoy learning about the differences. Not necessarily because I agree with all of them, any of them, most of them, I don't know. But I don't need to like something or agree with it in order to enjoy learning about it. And I don't need to agree with something, and I don't need to enjoy something in order to understand that this is simply how someone else lives. Give the bare minimum respect. It exists. I exist. Ta-da. You know, not going out of your way with malicious intent. And so the opposite of saying maybe one day we can get to a point where the concepts of God and sin are childish, is to understand that humanity moves as a whole when throughout all of time it never once has, nor has it ever shown any inclination to do so. I don't appreciate the ideation that a hive mind is perfection, because I like the understanding that perfection is had through imperfection. And not to say any one religion or morality is imperfect. It serves a purpose somewhere. But the imperfection would be lack of agreement, you know, inability to agree. That's the imperfection. And I think that inability to agree on things is fuel for the fire of knowledge, for the means to be an intellectual, for the want to further pursue knowledge. Contentment does not necessarily give way to needing understanding. So I don't appreciate point 57 either, where the desire is peace through control of everything. And that everything would reach the conclusion you have reached, and therein only when everything else has will you be able to manage peace, because, you know, the conquest is finally done. Shouldn't have made conquest your goal from the get. Any goal you have will be something you are perpetually chasing because it's a goal. That's the concept of a goal, is never to have it, but for you to always chase after it. Personally, I think the smartest thing therein to make a goal is either have a finite goal where you understand there is an end to it and then to replace it with another one, or to perpetually chase after something that makes sense to never have, but to always want. God, the infinite, knowledge, these things you will never be able to ascertain, ever. But it is perfectly reasonable to want them. Things that you can have: peace, love, contentment, joy. I don't think it's a good thing to make that a goal. You should appreciate something when you have it and appreciate the ability to lose it. Appreciate the next moment as it comes. Otherwise, you're just going to live perpetually in resentment. Protect your peace. Find what actually it means peace for you, I guess, also. And granted the subjectivity of life, may your wants align with your needs. And then once that happens, protect your peace. I hope to hell, your peace is not granted through you making yourself an unnecessary existence where others are concerned. All right. Do well. Eat well, sleep well, be well. Bye-bye.